Okay, so just to clarify, just briefly, I talked about America not having war on its soil. Well, forgive me for not talking about the War of 1812, but despite some of the shocking aspects, such as the White House getting burned and things like that, and we should know more about the War of 1812. Obviously, it still doesn't compare to what we're going to see show up later on, such as in this war, is my point. Okay, so moving on. Let's talk about the Versailles Treaty. In my opinion, this was one of the worst events, the Treaty of Versailles, after end of World War One. Like, if you're going to take one political event that was a set of arrangements intended to kind of stabilize the world after a war, the amount of catastrophic outcomes to occur from this particular event is so vast and very fundamental to understanding much of the history that we're going to cover for the rest of this chapter. And really what we're talking about is events that take place up until now. Okay, so for one, Germany gets blamed for the entire World War. We'll cover it a little bit more later, but we know that wasn't fair. But even if it was fair, there's I remember somewhere someone saying that the most dangerous person is the one who has nothing to lose. And Germany was put into a position in which, literally, by complying with the demands of the Treaty of Versailles Treaty, they would be forced to essentially never be able to rebuild their country after World War One. Many people question if Germany could have even ever pulled itself out of its post-war misery by complying with this treaty. And that is something that's chilling that we have to really think about. It doesn't excuse Hitler and the Nazis, but it does make us realize this, that if the international community puts a given state into that kind of position, we shouldn't be surprised to see a type of a Hitler character coming, a strong man that's going to try to help a nation like reemerge. And out of the conditions of already massive carnage and killing, it's not like people, don't know how to do that. In other words, you now have a nation that's already just seen lots of war and killing, and now you're just seeing your nation not be able to rebuild itself. You might have a little war weariness, but you've also have learned how to be a soldier, and I'm talking about large sections of the population. There's already been a lot of killing and desensitizing to that fact in probably many regards. What would you expect to come out of Germany in that time period? And that's something that we end up seeing. And I just kind of want to expand that discussion of Versailles Treaty that will work its way into the Cold War discussion. Woodrow Wilson, in particular, from the United States, promised self-determination for many nations that participated in helping the Allies. So, for example, Lawrence of Arabia, the British were telling all the Arabs, hey, if you help us kick out the Turks, the Ottoman Empire that's been ruling you guys, wouldn't that be great? Independence, some Arab states. Meanwhile, the French and the British were secretly carving up the Middle East in their interests, duping Arab nationalists or Arabs that wanting independence and to helping create a new form of foreign control over them. And you would see at this time period around World War One, many intellectual nationalists from China, from Vietnam, like I said, the Middle East, all did value a lot of Western ideas, and they really admired the United States because the United States, out of all the European powers, was the least imperialistic. If you just compare, to those other ones, and what they saw is at the end, the colonial powers, imperial powers of Europe, divided up the rest of the world again into different spheres. And so there was a total betrayal of the third world. We forget about this, that the Western democratic nations that are taking place in World War I and will take place in World War II are actually dominating much of what is called the third world. And out of the ashes of World War I comes the Soviet Union. And for the first time, there is an alternative system that will be able to draw in nationalists from third world countries to help them become independent. It's the French who occupy the Vietnamese, and then the Vietnamese kick out the French. And then the United States come back to into Vietnam. It's the Soviet Union who's going to give arms to Vietnamese to fight for their independence. And so I guess what I'm saying is that the battlegrounds for the world that we're going to see, and the sense of betrayal that the non-Western world is going to feel about this, is also going to be a consequence. Okay, but to get back to focus on World War II, here again, Hitler resists the Versailles Treaty with success. The League of Nations proved to be too weak as an attempt to try to create a diplomatic body to, deal with world problems, perhaps well intended, and it didn't have any teeth to it. Okay, and there's a whole other debate about what the significance of the UN right now. But these are attempts for leaders to get together and have a forum and try to work things out. And again, they've always been in dispute, and nationalists from all countries have always disputed the legitimacy of the League of Nations or the UN. Okay, but okay. So then you talk about a redrawn map of Eastern and Central Europe. Now, one of the things that this textbook talks about that's we should focus on is that we had the global Great Depression, and again, on a global level, there was a lot of things happening. The Japanese were pressing into China with some brutality that's really hard to stomach. That picture you saw was one of them, the results. But it talked about the rape of Nanjing or Nanking. Okay, soldiers using babies for bayonet practice, gang raped women. Japan's legacy from this time period was setting in motion things that were going to take place with Japanese expansion. And by the way, I don't have time to mention it, Japan was much more civil in World War I, and they were a part of the Allies. And they ended up feeling betrayed, that Europe basically had racism against them, and they thought they were playing the rules, and they were a part of this Western world. And when they found out, when they felt that total betrayal, when they were being condemned and not allowed to be a colonial player like the West, they really had this almost bitter reaction to completely rebel against these Western ideas. And the training for the military in Japan became really brutal and excessive. And they really switched, and they're going to end up embracing fascist ideologies, okay? A kind of belief in strength and military dominance, all right? So you have this cloud looming. You have Italy invading Ethiopia, doing total war, bombing civilians, and creating concentration camps, testing grounds. As Haile Selassie, the emperor of Ethiopia, said, "It's us today, it will be you tomorrow," almost prophetically. By the way, Haile Selassie was Prince Tafari before he became Haile Selassie. That was the guy that Bob Marley and the Rastafarians worship as a reincarnation of Jesus. So since he can predict the future, who knows, right? Wouldn't that be random? Okay, sorry. Anyways, not to make light of all this. So now we have the Italian, troops that invaded Ethiopia, civil war in Spain. Many argue that by that civil war in Spain that took place, where the fascists were able to gain power, the victory of General Franco, and that they could do that without any intervention, okay, from European powers. And that was a very significant war that everybody should learn more about. I think I might have mentioned about the Abraham Lincoln's Brigade. There was a bunch of American communists that went to fight on behalf of the forces against Franco. George Orwell participated in this. Many leftists tried to fight in this war unofficially as individual citizens to fight the fascists, and they still all lost. And there we saw the rise of fascism in Spain there. And so here was the world already in motion with lots of events that were still what we would call a state of war. Okay. And then you had the Rome-Berlin axis, right, where the alliance between Mussolini and Hitler that formed in 1936, and then you had Hitler taking that nationalist notion, right? For Germany, right? German-speaking lands should be a part of German state. That was the kind of romantic nationalist concept, right? And he ends up combining with Austria, the Anschluss, the joining together. You saw Sound of Music, right? That was that event put into the film. And then he went into the Sudetenland of Czechoslovakia, which was a German-speaking majority. And when he did this, France and Britain actually capitulated and said, okay, there'd be agreement between them that granted Germany sovereignty over the Sudetenland in a way to appease the Nazis. And we're going to talk about this legacy and the controversy about it, okay? That he was literally given a free hand to do this. And then for the Russians, okay, the fascists and the communists were bitter enemies, okay? I can't explain it enough. If you read Hitler's Mein Kampf, and I encourage you to at least look it over, he sees communists and Jews as the same thing. I mean, because you got to realize, Karl Marx's grandfather was a rabbi. His father converted to being a Protestant. And Karl Marx wrote what you could say is very anti-Jewish things, self-hating Jewish things. But remember, the one thing that Europeans really had is this idea that there was this immutable Jew. Once a Jew, always a Jew kind of thing. So, Marxism is associated with Jews. And many Jews are leaders in the communist movement. That's true. Many of the Bolsheviks are going to be Jewish at first. Trotsky is Jewish. Stalin's going to purge almost all of them later on, but the original body of Bolsheviks were really predominantly Jewish. And so he is against communists' Jewish aggression or problems. That's what Hitler's issue is. But he makes this pact with the Soviet Union. Why? They both needed each other strategically to get out of each other's way. And so unfortunately for a small country like Poland, okay, these smaller nations caught in between bigger nations could be used as pawns in games in ways to kind of be buffer zones between bigger nations. This is one of the unfortunate aspects of geography. Okay, so you look at this map and you get an idea and you see, look at what Poland's in between. Oh God, right? Look at Ukraine. I mean, do you see how this goes? Czechoslovakia. Okay, geography. You look at this and you say, what is a smaller nation to do when you've got bigger, more powerful nations caught in between each other? Okay, and the Soviet Union also just came out of a civil war that they've got to rebuild themselves on. I'm going to show you a clip right now of something that you might be shocked about.